Hi friends. Now I'm doing something a little bit different today. I've been reading A Dance with Dragons for a little project I'm working on. But as I'm going, I'm finding a lot of interesting little tidbits in the text, and I think some of the notes I have are kind of revealing. I think they'd be interesting just to hear about because even from one sentence you can come up with interesting little theories or little tidbits that might be telling us about how the power systems work, what the nuances and the themes may be that can help us project or to try to figure out what is going to happen in the future. And I think I wanted to share this stuff not only because I think I have some interesting observations, but also it can help you in developing your theories as well, maybe. Now I'm starting with the prologue, which is Varamyr. That's Varamyr's point of view chapter, and I'm just going to jump right into it. I don't know how I want to format this yet, um, but so this, just for a little summary, this is going to open with Varamyr skin changing one of his wolves, and it's going to proceed is until he dies and ends up stuck in one of his wolves until he has his true death. So it opens up, and the text says, I mean, right off the bat, I had this, uh, I honed in on something. So we start with Varamyr in his wolf One Eye, and the text says, as he ran, he saw through their eyes too and glimpsed himself ahead. Now, to me, I wasn't sure what was going on here, but it seems like that must mean that wargs kind of have a split consciousness somehow. Because how else could he be running himself, so controlling the body himself, but also warging them and seeing through their eyes? And I think a lot of this chapter, what it's doing is revealing how the warg powers work. Because really, a lot of this chapter is also about the wargs themselves, because Varamyr goes into some of the history of how he grew up and how he learned to skin change, and all the different skin changers who were all kind of outcast in their little they had their little conventions together. Um, as it goes on, yeah, they come across some humans, and text says one was female. The fur-wrapped bundle she clutched was her pup. Leave her for last, the voice whispers. The males are the danger. So here we're getting kind of the wolf's perspective, or at least Varamyr in the train of thought of the wolf One Eye. And there's this voice whispering, and it's kind of it's clearly Varamyr doing speaking, but it's not done in Varamyr's voice. So it kind of leaves us in a little in between space where it's like, is Varamyr in the wolf and it's his like humanity reminding him how to be smart? Or is it the wolf doing, wolf actions, but just being, what's the word I want to use? Counseled on what is best to do. So these are the kind of questions, if we're thinking about how the magic system works, if we want to know um, if the magic's real or where does it come from. Some people prescribe to someone like Preston Jacobs talking about his the minds of wolves, and Robbins, who thinks that the story is sci-fi. um, I think these are the kind of questions to consider if you want to talk about those kind of things. um, Moving forward, I just want to note that I know this isn't really hidden, but I think it's important to remember that the animals also hate being controlled generally. Wolves and dogs, not so much, but the bear wants to fight Varamyr, just like Thistle will eventually when she kills herself rather than let Varamyr take her body. And I had a note here about Varamyr calling himself Six Skins because he can control 6 animals. It really seems like since a couple of them fight back against him, other than the wolves, the shadow cat and the bear really do not like being controlled. But that means that it must require actual effort to contain them. And when Varamyr is in the eagle, the bear doesn't suddenly go attack him, right? So that must mean that he's kind of in two places at once at least. So it's an interesting, just mechanically, how the skin changing works. I'm just still figuring out how I want to do this section. I want to point out that it seems like the bond that the skin changer has, even with animals they're very close to, is vulnerable. We see this when Varamyr takes this old wolf Grayskin from Hagon, who was his mentor. Says that the text reads that the hunter died weeping after Varamyr took Grayskin from him, driving him out to claim the beast for his own. No second life for you, old man. So, Varamyr's kind of an ass, but more importantly for us, it shows that, perhaps with John, that his connection with his direwolf isn't this kind of magical, spiritual bond like a marriage. It seems like it is vulnerable to somebody else taking possession. And actually, a little bit earlier, Varamyr said himself that he should have taken that body. That it would be much better fit for him. So it seems like it's not as safe as we think it is. It's not like they're just buddies. There's something more going on there that is not solid. I'm just reading here. I'll be Thistle the Spearwife, and Varamyr Sixskins will be dead. His gift would perish with his body, he expected. He would lose his wolves and live out the rest of his days as some scrawny, warty woman. But he would live. So this is Varamyr wondering about. He's developing his plan to take Thistle's body. And this pointed one important thing out to me, and obviously it's not confirmed because Varamyr, he says that he expected the skill would perish with his body, but he is, the biggest expert we hear from in the book about this. He's the most powerful warg that we've seen in this, and he at least thinks that the ability to skin change is something that stays with the body. So whatever spirit or whatever it is that is moving from body to body, that is what is being moved when you warg. It seems like that is not what has the power. It is the actual body that has the power to do it. Just continuing. Oh, so this was interesting to me that there's a section where Hagon is telling Varamyr that south of the wall, the kneelers hunt us down and butcher us like pigs. So to me, that sounds like he's talking about some old time when wargs, came from the south, not just interacting with the south, because there's that wall there, and the wargs we know are all wildlings. So how would they have come in contact like that? So it seems to be that he's talking about a time in the past, probably prior to when the wildlings were wild. This sounds something like out of the Age of Heroes, out of the Age of Legend. And I know that people talk about perhaps the Boltons skinning Starks because Starks were wargs. And I've always kind of enjoyed that because I think it really rounds out um, those two houses' conflict with each other. And talk about in our history, there's a lot of stories about werewolves and hunting witches, things along those lines that I think it fits into nicely. Right, and Hagon is kind of a hippie. The wildlings seem to have some sort of natural leaning religion, um, the way that the old gods are very much animalistic of nature, or animism, I believe, is what it's called. But Hagon keeps repeating this idea that the gods are all around us, and it seems like whatever that is also in the weirwoods, and it may be in all of the rest of nature as well. So perhaps whatever spirit or whatever that consciousness is, maybe it's in everything in the natural world, but they're just able to see or communicate through the weirwoods. Um, and I think if talking about the afterlife, obviously at the end of this, Varamyr dies, and we do see through his perspective what happens to him when he dies. So if we're wondering about how do the unnatural things work, how do the otherworldly things, what's their mechanism, what is exactly happening with those, if we want to try to understand how the magic and the gods are working, I think that's probably one of the most telling parts in any of the books. Because what happens is, I'm just going to read some of it. Then both were gone, and he was rising, melting, his spirit borne on some cold wind. He was in the snow and in the clouds. He was a sparrow, a squirrel, an oak, a horned owl flew silently between his trees, hunting a hare. Faramir was inside the owl, inside the hare, inside the trees. Deep below the frozen ground, earthworms burrowed blindly in the dark, and he was them as well. I am the wood and everything that's in it. Now, to me, this very much reads like his spirit is passing through many different things. And I think it's interesting that the way that he's moving between different animals, it's very much described the same way that warging is. So it seems like to me that warging might actually be some sort of, your spirit or consciousness or whatever it is. It's jumping between animals, just like his, uh, the animals there being your actual body, and then the animal that you have that connection with. Um, and also wanted to point out that so at the end here, Varamyr is in One Eye's body, and he's watching as Thistle becomes a Wight. And the question I have to ask is, so when Varamyr died, his body left and went into One Eye. But is that something that only skin changers are able to do? Is that why they are skin changers? Because their soul can move and come back in? Because I want to know here is, well, is Thistle's soul still in her body, or did she leave too? Um, I'm thinking that might be why some people have the green seer powers, is because they have bodies that they can move in and out of that way. Even though to me, I'd say that if they're dead and their whole religion is about passing on into the natural world, my guess with this is that Thistle's soul did leave her body, and that skin changers are special because when their souls leave, that they're able to have their soul come in and out uh, at will. It seems. And just while I was wondering about this, I did have something I think a kind of big thought, which is that so I think what a lot of the details here are establishing is that consciousness can be split among different bodies, right? Because how else can Varamyr be running as a wolf but also watching himself? And how else can he be controlling a shadow cat who doesn't like him but also not be getting killed by his bear that hates him, right? So he must be able to be doing multiple things at once, whatever that is. His consciousness can be focused in different places at once. So, it seems like a dead person may be, their spirit has left their body as well. And obviously the spirit or consciousness that's in the body is what makes it hard to warg humans, because they're, I guess because their brains or their willpower or their spirit is stronger than other animals are. But reading this little bit with Thistle, it seemed to me that it wouldn't be very hard to warg a dead body because the spirit isn't there anymore, is it? So my thought, my kind of just projection, or with this, is that I want to ask this question: are wights just being warged by others? Because it seems to me that using the warging mechanism, it wouldn't be particularly hard to, put your essence into a dead body if, the spirit isn't in it anymore. And you could very easily, if we're saying that Varamyr can keep control of several animals who are alive and well, that it might not be that hard to then have an other whose powers we don't know the scope of them, but obviously they can do some wacky stuff, that it wouldn't be very hard for them to control, say 100 dead bodies if all the bodies are, not fighting back. So that's some of the details I wanted to point out for that. Next, it's going to be fun because we're jumping in with Tyrion and trying to figure out what's going on exactly with Illyrio and the Kings. So stay tuned for that one. I think stick around. I think this is going to be a fun little series where we can bounce ideas off. If you picked up anything else or wanted to comment on especially the idea about the mechanism of warging and whether or not wights might be warged, I think that's really fun to talk about. So let me know in the comment section below. See you in the next one.